Alright, what's up y'all, Wooly here, and today we're going to be covering the updated Fire DPS guide. We have dropped Solar Amplifier. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the loadout. I'll show you exactly what I'm running. You can see it here. This loadout is going to run left to right, just how you see it. So, spontaneous combustion, absorb heat, wildfire, snuff out. Of course, I'm running robot sidekick. If you don't want to run robot sidekick, run overheat. Don't run inferno, run overheat specifically. And then I run speed drain. My Eye of Gemini is at 200, so as long as I keep it up, I get that 5% buff. And of course, I do swap it out sometimes for Neo Venom, but 99% of the time I am running speed drain. I'm keeping my damage going. You can run whatever you want there. My preference. I have no problem dealing out tons of damage with it. So I kind of showcased that in the low SP build, and the reasoning for it. Does keep your power up, keeps your damage up, keeps you buffed. But again, it's just my preference, guys. But if you want to play like I play, you want the loadout that I run, you want to perform like I perform, this is what you're going to run, okay? And then I'll show you the single target version as well. Now, this is really just a single target loadout, mostly with AoE elements. But I can tell you, I've spent about a year perfecting my Fire DPS. I've got all the videos to prove it, with all the different artifacts. So I've invested a lot of time and money into Fire, and trial and error, and I'm pretty happy with this build here. I'm very confident in saying that this is the strongest Fire DPS that I have done personally. Even with Solar Amplifier included. So, like I said, if you want to run Solar Amplifier, just drop Absorb Heat. The loadout is going to be the same. Doesn't matter where you slot Spontaneous Combustion at that point. But there's other videos that I've done where you can go check that out. So, this is the loadout. Now, what has changed specifically is going to be the allies and the artifacts, of course. So, we're running Crypto for the strong combat ability. We're running Batman. So Batman, specifically, we're going for his support. So basically, when you enter combat, he's going to give a buff to your might and your precision for the first 6 attacks, I believe. Now, what's interesting about that is it doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? But consider when you're standing in your Eye of Gemini, you get a very big buff to your damage, and that buff is about 6 seconds. So we can kind of consider this is acting very similar to that. The only difference is as long as you're in combat and you're dealing out damage consistently, when your hit counter gets up to 100, it will reset, and then you should get the benefit from the Batman ally again. So it should proc. You're in combat, you get your hit counter up to 100, it should proc again. And then of course we're going to be running the toxin finisher from the Batman who laughs. Now, like I said, don't worry about the parsers and what you see here. This is all going to be AoE, single target with AoE elements. But I can tell you from experience, you will be at the top of the boards, as long as you don't miss a beat on your loadout. And of course, we're not running just the tap anymore. We are running a full round of brawling. That was something that I just started implementing when I went into Xbox. So it's not just for lower skill point builds, it is for high skill point builds. Take a look at the stat points. You can see that I do put my overflow into precision. So specifically, I use a round of brawling every 2 or 3 rotations to make sure that blast adapter goes off. But even if we don't have the blast adapter go off, we're still hitting pretty hard with just brawling. So, I think everybody's pretty comfortable with brawling. So, I'm going to show you what the actual damage looks like. I'm going to do a couple of minutes here with the Eye of Gemini going as well, so that you can see what those parsers start to look like, okay? Without further ado, let's just kind of jump into it. Alright, so we're just gonna go ahead and stop. I think we've seen enough. You kind of see how it performs. You kind of see how that buff from that Eye of Gemini just goes crazy with it, and that's specifically why I run speed drain. So what kind of made me want to try running speed drain over Neo Venom was we were doing a lot of COU spams, and I was facing off, against these two precision DPS and a rage DPS, and I noticed that they were just constantly dropping their Eye of Gemini back to back to back to back. So I knew they were running two supers, but I knew one of them was going to be a 25%er. So I started doing that myself, and I started opting in to go to speed drain more often than not. If I am running with, of course, an EOG spam healer, it's going to be dropping it and keeping my stuff full all the time. I'm dropping Robot Sidekick and I'm putting Neo Venom in there with it, so I have two going back to back. Okay. Now I do have another build that I can show you guys. That's going to be for a different video, and that's going to be a 3 power rotation where we can actually just keep our Eye Gemini going constantly over and over. But that is in a very rare circumstance, so that's why I don't bother covering it right now. Alright, so artifacts, let's go ahead and take a look at them really quickly. I have Gemini, Transformation card, Strategist card. These artifacts right here at this level with this specific build, we have pretty much been at the top of the board with no issues at all. The one thing that I've always struggled with on fire has always been boss damage, which is really the only damage that matters. Yes, burning ads matters, but bottom line, when you're in the raids, when you're in the end game, boss damage is the only damage that really matters. So I don't care if you have 105 million damage at the end of the raid. What does your boss damage look like? Because if you have 105 million damage and 54 million in boss damage, for an example, and there's another DPS behind you who has like 75 mil total damage, but they have 51 million in boss damage, you need to go back to the drawing board. Bottom line. So that's why I've always been tweaking my loadouts, making those changes, right? Is because we needed to see the better boss damage, and I can confidently say this is a boss killer. This loadout here is where you're going to see a lot of boss damage coming out of. Go try it for yourself. Let me know what you think. Alright. I'm going to show you the single target version that I've been running for a long time. Is we basically just drop wildfire. So I'm going to show you what that single target number looks like here, and of course we're going to be running Eye of Gemini when we do it. So let's go. Alright, so just going to go ahead and stop there. So that's the single target version of it. You're basically just dropping wildfire. So you can also run that all the time if you want. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. But specifically, that's the build that I use, or those are the two builds that I use when I am running stuff. So swap that out. Now, tac mods. The only thing that really changes here is we do run the restorative overheat in the legs. Excuse me, for when we actually do run overheat in those instances. So again, if you don't want to run robot sidekick, you can just run that full rotation and you can swap robot sidekick out for overheat. Other than that, we are going to be running the extended supercharge in the chest. We are going to be running you can put berserker here. I use accelerated soak flames for my tank, but we do want to run this in the chest over penetrating strikes or core strength for that 5% max supercharge. It's not going to hurt your damage, I promise you. But again, it's your preference. If you want to swap that out, feel free. This is just what I run. Escalating might in the neck, and then of course we're running the speed drain, 2.5% supercharge in the head, and then I run the blast adapter in the weapon, and we run max damage in the hands. And of course we are always going to be running our trusty nitro, and we're always going to be running a compound omega right alongside it. You don't need to do this when you go into Omni, because Omni stat clamps, so you're only going to be mitigated anyways, right? So not a big deal there. But when you're running real in game, you know, the last two raids until the next one comes out, and we have 3 again, then you'll want to double down on your consumables. Okay. That's pretty much it. So you definitely want to have a pet trinket, your henchman, your orbital, your supply drop. Keep that buff going. But I don't do any art swapping. This is just what I run. So this was also my way to counter art swapping without having to deal with all that, because you know, the frame rate just isn't good enough on the PS4 Pro. It's not quick enough to do that. Also, that's going away in the future. It has been mentioned on the forums. MEPS has addressed it. So the devs will probably look into that. I don't expect that to happen anytime soon, but it's also why I don't want to invest into art swapping and get reliant on it. It is going to go away. But we want to keep our Eye of Gemini going as much as possible. So, anyways, that's it, guys. Pretty straightforward. As always, thank you for tuning in. If you're a returning viewer, so a lot of you guys tend to come back and watch the videos when I look at the analytics, so appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, consider sticking around if you're into DC Universe Online. I am going to be dropping an ice build. I'm still working out the kinks, but I think I've got it figured out. So we've got 3 different loadouts for ice. We got one for the duos, one for the raids, and then just one whenever you want to run it. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably drop that in about a week or so, because I need to do some more testing, but I think we've got it for the most part. We are going to be running solar amplifier on that one, so stay tuned, guys. Anyways, I'll catch you next time. Wooly out and stay frosty.